my fear of not belonging really hindered me and made me not shine and not be myself. This was true at school, it was true with friends, and it was true at work. As a result of me being afraid of speaking my voice at work, I wasn't seen as a leader. I was a diligent follower, but I was not a leader.
Welcome to the TalentGrow Show, where you can get actionable, results-oriented insight and advice on how to take your leadership, communication, and people skills to the next level and become the kind of leader people want to follow. And now, your host and leadership development strategist, Halelly Azulay.
Talent Growers, welcome back to another episode of the TalentGrow Show. I'm Halelly Azulay, your leadership development strategist here at TalentGrow. And this week we have an unusual episode in that we don't really talk about practical skills or research-based new theories, but we actually talk about something very deep and I hope meaningful. And I think that we scratch the surface of a topic that many of us are experiencing but don't really talk about. And my guest is someone who brings her own very personal story. And that's why she's talking about it on this show. And I think that it's going to be of benefit and of value, not only to you personally, but also to those you lead. So this is going to be with Wendy Gates Corbett, and we're going to talk about belonging. Let's dive in. Talent Growers, we have Wendy Gates Corbett, CPLP, on the show today. It's going to be a little bit of a different show, so I hope that you're strapped in and ready. I think it'll be fun. Wendy is recognized as a leader in the talent development field. Her love for the industry fuels her desire for all professionals to become and stay relevant in their chosen fields. She speaks around the country and around the world on the power of visuals, remaining relevant, and the power of belonging. She is the owner of Refresher Training, LLC, a company that works with professional athletes, speakers, and business leaders, helping them speak with impact and influence. She served as chair of ATD's National Advisors for Chapters and on the ATD International Board of Directors. And for those of you not in the know about the alphabet soup, ATD stands for the Association for Talent Development, which is the world's biggest professional association for people in the talent development industry, of which I am also a member. And that's how Wendy and I originally connected. We were both leaders in our local chapters and then became involved with all kinds of national committees and have engaged and known each other for many years. So I'm so happy to have you on the show. Wendy, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Halelly. I'm honored to be here.
I'm really glad that you're here. And today we are going to talk about a topic that is not a typical topic for the show. And it was the third of the things I said about what you like to bring to the world. And that's the issue of belonging. But before we go there, we always have our guests describe their professional journey very briefly. Where did you start and how did you end up where you are today?
It has been kind of a windy career journey, but it started as a corporate training professional. I spent about 20 years working with technology companies running their client training program. And in 20 years, I started out as a trainer and then worked my way up through the leadership. And I realized that the higher I got, the more career external criteria that I checked, the farther I got from learners. And I ended up feeling successful but stagnant. And I had several experiences where I saw amazing speakers who had great content and their slides were just horrible. And it hurt my heart because I felt bad for the speakers and I felt bad for the audience.
Yeah.
And once I started seeing that, Halelly, I saw it everywhere, to the point where I ended up leaving my successful but stale career in technology training to start my company, Refresher Training, LLC. I am on a mission to rid the world of bad presentations. And
Amen.
That's what I do.
Oh my God. I think that is like a collective sigh of relief that you just across the world now that they hear it?
Well, my career is anything but stagnant now. I've been in business for about 6 years. And about 2 years ago, I started feeling really pulled to start talking about this sense of belonging, which is what you and I are going to talk about today.
Yeah. Say more about how did this pop up for you? Why did it become something that you wanted to bring into your business?
It wasn't intentional. It was really a call from inside. And I think about 2 years ago, I had been in business for 4 years and was feeling fairly confident and competent in what I was doing. I felt stable in my business. And this voice inside me started to say, you need to tell people about this. It's time to start talking about belonging. It was not intentional. I did not intend to become a professional speaker. I did not intend to start sharing this message, but it has played such a deep role in my life, both on the negative side, but now also on the positive side, that I feel compelled to share my experience with it so that other people can realize and recognize that they get to own their own sense of belonging. I feel strongly enough to share that message that because of the freedom that comes with realizing that we actually own our own sense of belonging. It's no one else in this world but us.
And you did a really great TEDx talk on it. We'll link to it in the show notes. For listeners right now, give us a little more of the short version of the story of this perspective, the situation that so many of us face and our teammates might be asking themselves about, and that most people don't talk about, the situation that you are now sharing.
Sure. What happened in my experience is that I grew up with a voice in my head that said, you're different and therefore you don't belong. I didn't even know that voice was in my head, but that voice spoke to me every single day. And because of that lesson, I spent more than 35 years of my life believing that if you, Halelly, thought that I was different from you, that you wouldn't accept me and I wouldn't belong. So my goal in every interaction with you and every other person was to convince you that I was the same as you, whether we're talking race, political persuasion, ethnicity, class, you name it. I thought that I needed to convince you that I was the same as you. I didn't know that I was doing this. It was my normal experience. And as a result of being afraid of being unacceptable, I never spoke up first. I really wasn't a leader because I was afraid that if I voiced my opinion before you did and you had a different opinion than I did, well, then we wouldn't be the same and then you wouldn't like me. Mm-hmm. So my fear of not belonging really hindered me and made me not shine and not be myself. This was true at school, it was true with friends, and it was true at work. As a result of me being afraid of speaking my voice at work, I wasn't seen as a leader. I was a diligent follower, but I was not a leader. And I didn't even know that. The turning point came for me in the middle of nowhere. It was not a crisis situation. I was driving down the road here in Raleigh. I was in my happy place. I was singing my favorite Mariah Carey song on the radio, and I was singing Silly at the top of my lungs. And I pulled up at a stoplight. And on one side of me is a car of white women, and on the other side of me is a car of black women. And I didn't know who to try to be the same as. And the reason for that is because I'm biracial. I'm half black, half white. So I was in my happy place, pulled up at the stoplight, and then all of a sudden I flip because I'm worried about the women in the cars next to me. and who I should try to belong with. And what occurred to me is I'm flipping out here. These women in the cars next to me have no idea that I'm flipping out. It's nothing that they've done. It's not their fault. It was the voice in my head telling me that I need to belong with these women. And while I was paused at that stoplight freaking out, there was a tiny voice in my head that said, what about me, Wendy? What is it that I want? Where is it that I want to belong? And that was my voice. I'd never heard that voice before. I wanted to sing Mariah Carey, but the other voice in my head was telling me that I needed to either belong with the white women on one side or the black women on the other side. And it was at that moment where I heard my voice that I realized how much energy I had been spending trying to convince you, whoever you are, that I'm the same as you. And since that time, that one question, what about me, has allowed me to stop trying to make you believe that I'm the same as you. It has allowed me to stay in my head instead of trying to crawl inside your head to figure out how you saw me. And as soon as I stopped doing that, I started becoming me. It was almost like my body and my soul, my spirit were coming to life and being me. And since I've done that, first of all, the amount of energy that I now have is so much greater. Wow. Because I am no longer spending that mental energy trying to figure out how to make you like me. And I have blossomed and I love being fully me. And the reason I feel compelled to share this is because the ability to ask the question, what about me, doesn't cost any money. It doesn't require an internet connection. It doesn't require any technology. And when we realize that we own our own sense of belonging, no one can take it away from us. Mm-hmm. And in my experience, there are so many people in this world who believe that they don't belong for whatever reason. And I am here to tell those people, including myself, us people, that we do belong.
There's it's a very powerful story, and the visual of the situation in the car. I can only imagine what a strange awakening that is. And making explicit or bringing into conscious awareness something that obviously was operating in the background. It's kind of like having an app running on your phone that you don't know, and it's sucking up the battery life of your phone without you turning it on or having anything to do with it, it sounds like.
Yes, that's such a great analogy, because I think we can all relate to the apps that we have no idea are running on our phones or our iPads, and they are draining the batteries, and we don't even know why. But once we find them and turn them off, or we get to choose when they refresh, we get so much more battery life back. That's a great analogy.
Well, you're welcome to steal it. I think an analogy is always so. I wonder, are there other costs other than you described? Obviously, it's a cost to energy. Are there other costs to having too many people, as you say, walking around and wasting their mental energy on this problem?
On this fear. I think one of the most egregious costs with worrying about whether we belong is living in a constant state of fear. Mm-hmm. Because when we are always afraid of what other people think or whether other people are going to like us or accept us, then we're stuck, in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we are stuck in the safety level of our needs, and we don't get to express who we really are. We don't get to feel worthy. We are drained emotionally and spiritually, all because we are spending so much energy living in fear.
Yeah, it's awful. It's very hard, I think, probably just to even find happiness and fulfillment when you've got that fear running in the background. Are there some additional benefits that you have found or that people that you've helped overcome this have found to themselves or to their team or organization, or maybe even are benefits to our society of more people asking, what about me?
Yeah, one of the things that comes to mind for me is that the difference in the way that people respond to me, and when we get to that level in our relationship where they feel free to tell me how they really feel. It used to be that people would say, Wendy, I'm really glad I got to meet you and got to know you, because before I met you, I thought you were a fill in that blank. Because I was so guarded. I had really thick emotional armor covering who I was. And I've always been me. I've always been a nice person. I've always been kind of funny and silly, but people didn't know that. And you wouldn't know that from looking at me. But since I have blossomed, since I have bloomed and become me, people now say, my gosh, you are so out there. You are so, it's clear that I am genuine, and it's clear that I am vibrant. People describe me as vibrant. Mm-hmm. And that's just so different. I think if we could remove the armor that we use to protect us, there would be such deeper connection in this world. And I think that true personal connection is something that would have huge personal, organizational, and societal benefits.
It's so interesting because it's almost like the opposite. You were achieving the opposite of what you were intending to. When you were trying to fit in, it's almost like you were trying to connect with people, but by not allowing your true self to be expressed or not being free to just be you, you were creating a barrier.
That's right. And it was me. That I think is one of the huge things. It wasn't anybody else saying, Wendy, you don't belong. It was me being afraid that you would tell me I would belong. And all of that is in my head, as I get tired just saying that. But that, I think, is the huge insight, is that it was my voice, my belief that was making me think and leading to the fear that directed my behavior. And when I realized that it was in my head, then I could change it. I realized that I had the power to change it.
Yeah.
And that has been so freeing.
One of the things that I know from geeking out on neuroscience and, reading up about things that make people tick and bringing it to my work is that we actually have a very hardwired, strong need to belong. It's not something that is very rational. It's in our operating system, back to that analogy, because as humans, as a species, our survival depends on our ability to be part of a tribe, to be part of a group, because we can't get enough food on our own. We can't ensure our own and our family's safety just by ourselves. And so the minute that you have to work in cooperation with others and you have to turn your back and, one person collects the berries and one person goes out hunting and one person watches over the campground, you have to trust that the other people will do their part and watch your back in order for you to be able to focus on providing the value you can provide. And the more that we feel like someone is part of our tribe or part of our in-group, the more that we anticipate that we can predict their behaviors and that we can predict that they have a shared interest with us. And the more that they seem like they're from some other group or not part of our tribe, the more that we might be suspicious of their motives and therefore more guarded. Like this is way back to, like caveman days. It's in our biology. And that's probably what's driving a lot of, the things we see with in-group and out-group and dividing people across gender and race and whatever other lines we do, is because we're always sort of trying to sort people into friend or foe.
Yes, that's so true. It is innate. We really do have a biological basis for needing to belong, because we can't get through this life by ourselves. We need others, and we need to know that we are safe with others. And I think that is especially true in the workplace, when for those of us who don't work alone, which is most of us who don't work alone, where we need to rely on other people. And from an organizational perspective, when we can create a culture where employees, where our team feel like they belong, they know that they belong, think of all of that energy and focus and attention that they have freed up and can focus on being more productive and performing at higher levels.
And there's ways to feel like you belong and to connect authentically with other people, which I loved in your description of the new Wendy, that don't involve being the same as them. Because as many ways as we're different from others, I find that there's probably just as many, if not even more ways in which we can find points of commonality or shared interests, or even just ways in which we can find someone else curious or fascinating, not because we share the interest, but because we're interested in something that they are interested in. Do you find that?
Yeah, I do. I think I am now excited about difference, and I'm curious about difference from a positive perspective. Instead of being afraid of it, I'm excited and intrigued by it.
Yeah, so it pulls you towards someone when you see it that way.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's actually really interesting research that comes out of one of my former podcast guests, Dr. Paul Zak, who studies trust, and he like draws blood from people and measures their oxytocin levels. And he was finding that when we have a moment where we feel that like spark of curiosity and connection with someone, we release oxytocin, and their brain releases oxytocin in reaction to our release of oxytocin. So we have this little oxytocin release party, and oxytocin causes trust.
I love that oxytocin party, oxytocin release party.
Yeah, so like being curious and then finding little points of commonality, or just points of common interest, or just things that make you want to know more about someone, makes you intrigued, like you said, and curious and pulled in. And then that actually causes them subconsciously to feel the same way about you.
Yes. Think
cool.
about that in a work environment. How much of a sense of team could be strengthened by having an oxytocin release party.
Yeah, we should trademark that, huh? I think it just takes curiosity and being what I call a fascination detective, just kind of seeking out what's interesting and fascinating about people that I meet, rather than how are they different. You know, one thing that listeners may or may not know, I don't share exactly the same experience as you, in that I may be very fortunate that part of my personality somehow allowed me to overcome lots of challenges in feeling as an outsider. My dad, based on his career, we moved all the time. I moved 14 times by the time I was 12, including moving to a new country, a new continent, a new language, new everything. So,
oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I always was the outsider. I never really felt like I belonged, because I always moved into a situation where people already had connections, existing connections and cliques. And I always had to try to sort of mesh in with them, but I never was exactly like them or had similar experiences as them. So that makes it very hard, you know, and as a kid, man, kids can be really mean, but also sometimes adults, you know, to the outsider.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I developed, I think, a way to, I certainly had to develop thick skin, I guess, in some ways, to lower my expectations of feeling a sense of complete belonging. So maybe that was freeing me up, that I didn't expect that anymore after a while. But also, I think that I have a little bit of a contrarian personality. So part of me was sort of like nonconformist. So, you know, so I almost wanted sometimes to be really different on purpose, like spitefully. I'm going to, you know, I'm not going to be like you. I'm not going to even try. But I found that the curiosity and just trying to like connect with people in a warm and positive way allowed me to build bridges. And so I've always sort of been the bridge builder between insiders and outsiders.
Oh, that's nice. We need more people who build bridges.
Yeah. We sure do. And there's so many ways that people feel divided, and increasingly so. And I have to say, we're not going to get on this, but like identity politics, in my opinion, just exacerbates the problem, does not help, because it allows people to sort of focus in on the in-group, and how we're different rather than things that connect us.
Yeah, I can see that.
This is a leadership podcast, and when we're talking about this, bringing it back into the organizational world, what do you think leaders can do specifically to engage people as they are and help them feel like they belong? Or what are some traps that leaders can avoid?
Yeah, when I work with organizations on growing their sense of belonging throughout their organization, we talk about how leaders can connect, respect, and protect their team. When we talk about connection, we talk about how individuals can connect with themselves, where as leaders we can encourage our employees to spend time alone, quiet time with themselves, so that they get to know themselves deeper and better. And also creating connection points with others on their team, where we are connecting as humans and our individuality is celebrated, just like you and I were talking, hello, like the oxytocin release party.
Yeah.
Creating opportunities for those to happen. When we talk about respect, we dive into the idea that employees need to feel respected and valued, not just by their leaders, but also by their peers. So how can organizations create, and how can leaders create opportunities to make sure that each individual employee on their team knows that they are appreciated and valued and respected? And also ways for peers to share respect and value for each other. And then lastly, when it comes to protection, and I think about protection not so much from a physical standpoint, but more from a dignity standpoint, where we are creating environments that protect the inherent dignity of every individual. That's something I think that leaders can do to encourage and expand the sense of belonging in their organizations.
Yeah, because it all just stems from that inherent need for safety. So feeling respected and feeling protected can help people feel safe enough to just be themselves. And then being invited to be themselves and valued for who they are can help to reinforce that matters.
Yes, precisely. You got it.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, this has been a very interesting conversation, one that I would love to continue. We're almost out of time, and I was hoping that by bringing you on and having you share your story and your message, that we kind of get things spinning a little bit in the hearts and the heads of the talent growers, the listeners, and get them thinking about what about them and what about people on their team, and how can they create more freedom for people to just be themselves and be connected. So thank you for that, Wendy. What's new and exciting for you on your horizon? What new project or discoveries got your attention these days?
I have two projects that I'm really excited about and I'm very close to. Very soon, I am launching what I call Slide College. So I do programs on ways to design more visual, more compelling, more engaging presentation slides. And so far, I've done either a 1-hour program or a half-day workshop. And what I'm launching soon is a deep dive. Instead of Slide School, I'm calling it Slide College, where it's a multi-week program delivered virtually, where we take a deep dive into some of the what I call slide rules that I use most commonly to improve other people's slides. So doing this deep dive into slide design and training others how to design more visual, engaging slides is new for me. And along with that, also coming out in the next month or so, is my book called Slide School.
Oh, that's exciting. I didn't know you had a book cooking.
It's coming soon.
Wow, that's awesome. I'm happy for you, Wendy. That's such an exciting time to have a book come out. And Slide College sounds exciting as well. So if you already have a link to it, we'll share it in the show notes. And if not, then we can come back and update that.
Great. Thank you.
Sure. So before we wrap up, we always end the TalentGrow Show with an actionable tip. So what's something specific that listeners can do today, tomorrow, this week to upgrade their own leadership success, or I guess in this case, it's own personal success or happiness based on the topic we've been discussing?
I would encourage everyone to ask yourself the next time you're in a situation where you start thinking, I wonder if they think I'm, and then fill in that blank. When you start worrying about what other people are thinking about you, to ask yourself, what about me? Not making your needs more important than theirs, but equally as important as theirs. And to use that question to remain in your own head and remain true to yourself.
Awesome. Okay. Ask yourself, what about me? So good. Thank you. We'll help people stay in touch with you and learn more from you and about you. What's the best place to go?
Best place to reach me is through LinkedIn. I'm Wendy Gates Corbett with no hyphen. Easy to find on LinkedIn. You can also check out my website, refresher-training.com.
And do you hang out on any other social media outlets or just LinkedIn?
I'm on Facebook and Twitter as well.
Okay.
As Refresher Training.
All right. We'll link to that. And I'm sure that people are going to want to learn more from you. And thank you so much for sharing your story and yourself on the TalentGrow Show, Wendy. We really appreciate you.
Halelly, thank you so much for inviting me. I really appreciate it. And it's been fun.
Yes, it has. Thank you. Okay, talent growers, as you know, you need to take action. This week, it's a little bit more spiritual, I guess, and thinking about how are you interacting with the world? How are you bringing your full self to your work? And how are you enabling others to do the same? So I hope that you'll follow up and take Wendy's advice. And I hope that you enjoyed this episode. You know that I want to hear your feedback. You know that I want to know what other topics you'd like me to cover or what guests you'd like me to bring on. So let's keep the conversation going. I am here for you. I make this podcast to benefit you and to develop leaders that people actually want to follow. Well, that's it for this episode of the TalentGrow Show. I'm Halelly Azulay, your leadership development strategist here at TalentGrow. And until the next time, make today great.
Thanks for listening to the TalentGrow Show, where we help you develop your talent to become the kind of leader that people want to follow. For more information, visit talentgrow.com.